This is the book of Jeremiah 15, verse 33, and it says, "Thus said the Lord of hosts, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go." This video is going to dispel that myth that only the dark-skinned Hebrew Israelites were and are currently oppressed by these Edomites, Esau, the so-called white man. After camp, I spoke with an older Issachar man who identified himself as a pastor of a small church out here. And upon seeing my signs, my posters that I have out there with the 12 tribe poster and also some of the other afflictions, on the scriptures, just kind of like the one you see in front of you right now, he revealed to me that often that they talk about the fact that they are oppressed, okay, that they are, given the raw deal, the so-called Mexicans, and all the other tribes that are from what is known as South America. But they really go into discussion about how Esau has basically, the so-called white man has basically broken the so-called black man, who has basically broken the house of Judah, okay? Negroes from the tribe of Benjamin, Levi, okay, and Judah, okay? And they go into that and they're aware of that. So to me, I understood, that these other tribes are aware of the affliction that us dark-skinned Hebrew Israelites are going through. The one thing is that what kind of was surprising to me with him was that he was unaware of really the kind of oppression and degradation and really the kind of things that Esau had actually done, okay? And specifically to the tribe of Issachar, but mixed in with this migration is also these other tribes that are coming from what is known as South America. So I'm going to go through this video. You're going to see a documentary here. I'm going to pause it, bring in more scriptures and some other commentary, and you're going to see and hear the ignorance and just the deeds, the wickedness of this man. And in case you haven't seen it before, this is going to be an eye-opener for you. But before we get started, I'd like to give all glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem, Rakakadash, double honor to the teachers, elders, and apostles of Great Millstone, also to you brothers that are putting on this truth faithfully, fearlessly feeding the sheep, and you brothers and sisters that are tuning in, Shalom. So without further ado, let's get it started.
Health issue too, because we don't know what people have coming in here.
They're coming in with diseases such as smallpox and leprosy and TB that are going to affect our people in the United States.
It's just a fact. You're going to see disease outbreak.
It's a story about American paranoia at the border, about a toxic campaign of disinfection and discrimination, and a U.S. practice that would go on to inspire Nazi scientists.
What was in this? Zyklon B. You remember what the Nazis had? Listen. Empty. This was used, man. This was actually used.
It was a turbulent year at the border. The Mexican Revolution was ongoing, and the U.S. was about to enter World War I.
All of a sudden, you have the war hysteria created by World War I. People here in El Paso that are deadly afraid that the Germans are going to attack from Ciudad Juarez.
The fear of invasion brought tensions to the border, while across the U.S., a different movement was gaining strength. The eugenics movement, based on junk science, aimed to create a genetically and morally superior population. That meant stricter controls on immigration, only allowing those deemed fit to enter. On Ellis Island, one of the busiest ports of entry at the time, U.S. health officials were tasked with weeding out immigrants they thought were unfit or disease carriers. And across the country, that process coincided with the stereotyping of Mexicans as inferior and unclean. Dozens of film titles included the word greaser, a derogatory term used to describe Mexicans. This racist sentiment was strong at the U.S.-Mexico border.
So we're going to pause it there for a second here. Let's go into the book of Psalms 10 and verse 9. It says, "He lied in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lied in wait to catch the poor. He doth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net." Now, what is this net? This net is Great Babylon, America, okay? Why? Because our people are very covetous, okay? We want things that that we don't have, okay? So the so-called Mexicans, okay, and those other tribes that were coming up from the border, okay, were looking for a better life. Because why? They did not have that life out there, or with the life that they had, they didn't consider it to be good. So they had heard of the life out here in Great Babylon, America, and they were looking to come. And this is that net that Esau depends on even up to this day, okay, to catch the poor. And we seeing this issue going on right now, even to this day. Okay, let's continue on.
El Paso's mayor, Tom Lee, had developed an obsession with cleanliness, and it defined his political platform.
This obsession with not only racial purity, but physical purity. He was going to literally clean up El Paso from all these bad elements. And by bad elements, he often meant racially bad elements.
One of Mayor Lee's biggest fears was a disease called typhus, spread by lice. So, under the pretense of sanitary betterment work, he helped lead a campaign to inspect every house in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood.
Okay, now you're seeing this, right? You're listening to this. Doesn't it seem, like deja vu? You're dealing with that right now. What happened 2 years ago? Okay, who became the face of the C-19? Okay, what did they actually decide to go down there with these lockdowns? Okay, the hand sanitizers, which we found out that those were toxic. Okay, the face masks, which we found out was toxic and actually had asbestos, okay, in them. Okay, and all of these other things that they put out in the name of what? Health. Okay, and we see that this was happening as back in 1917 out here in El Paso, Texas. Okay, continuing.
Neighborhood. If the inspectors found lice, occupants were forced to take vinegar and kerosene baths, have their heads shaved and clothing burned. Hundreds of homes were eventually destroyed. Lee also expanded the supposed health measures to include inmates in the El Paso jail.
They had to strip naked, take a bath inside a tub full of kerosene, and on one occasion, it seems somebody lit a match.
27 prisoners, majority Mexican or Mexican American, burned to death in the fire that the newspapers called the jail Holocaust. But despite the tragic fire, Mayor Lee pushed forward with even more aggressive plans.
Now let's take a look at that. Now you notice what they did, right? They burned down the fire, and when you go back to this, okay, what did you see here? Take a look at this. It says, Bridges says grand jury refused to indict for a jail Holocaust. Okay, this is the book of Zechariah 11, verse 4. And it says, "Thus said the Lord, Yahweh Shemashai, my God, feed the flock of the slaughter, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, Yahweh Shemashai, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not." Now, they can say that, and these Edomites can brag about that. Why? Because they're already here, okay, in America, okay. Again, we point out in this video, on the East Coast, the Edomites, the dirty, filthy Edomites that were coming from Europe, okay, they did not have to go through the same type of oppressive, okay, type of sanitation quarantine that the so-called Mexicans, okay, and other tribes that were coming up through the border had to go through, okay. And why? It's because this is the net, Great Babylon, America, okay. And these people think that they can do whatever they want to do and get away with it. And that's what you're seeing right there. It's right there in the news, okay? We don't just be saying this or the scriptures because we're just mad. No, it's right there, okay? Esau puts it out there. Let's continue.
But despite the tragic fire, Mayor Lee pushed forward with even more aggressive plans.
He sends a telegram, a Western Union telegram, to Rupert Blue, who was the Surgeon General up in Washington, D.C. And basically, well, let me just read it. Hundreds dirty, lousy, destitute Mexicans arriving at El Paso daily will undoubtedly bring and spread typhus unless a quarantine is placed at once.
The government didn't agree to a full quarantine because evidence suggested that typhus wasn't a major threat in the area. But instead, they funded a new disinfection plant at the border in 1916. In this facility, every immigrant considered a second-class citizen had to strip naked. Their clothes were sent to a large steam dryer and then fumigated with toxic pesticides.
Now, one thing you notice about Esau, and anytime he's doing anything, why is it that Esau like to strip people naked? This is what they did with those prisoners that they got from Iraq and Afghanistan when they put them out there in Guantanamo Bay. Okay, they strip them naked, actually had them, the men go on top of each other, okay, you know, in a sodomite fashion, which they knew that was going to be an impact on their psyche, okay, and then took pictures and posted online. This is what this man does. Anytime he gets his hands on you, on his prisoners, he is going to do something that's going to be either rape or sodomy, okay? But somehow they like to strip you naked. They're actually doing it at the airports out here right now. They're stripping people naked. Why? Okay, let's continue.
It's inside the gas room. An inspector would check each person's body, including private parts, for lice. If they found lice, immigrants would have to shave their head and body hair and bathe in a mix of kerosene and vinegar. Some even had their eyelids checked for things like pink eye, and many had to complete puzzles or simple IQ tests to prove that they were fit for entry. After this process, they'd receive a ticket as proof that they were disinfected, but they would need to go through this every 8 days in order to re-enter the U.S.
Do we see that going on right now? In fact, right now there's a process going on with INS where it requires that anybody that is looking to get naturalized into this wicked queendom, okay, now has to take the what? The BG Kool-Aid, okay, in order to get naturalization. In the meantime, they just came over here on ships, okay, massacred the tribe of Gad, okay, and continuously, okay, murder, rape, and pillage, okay, either the communities of the so-called black man in this country, okay, and ostracize and enslave all the other tribes that are here, okay, from Israel, okay, the other Hebrew Israelite tribes, okay. So here they are once again. Back then, okay, you can see that these devils were very advanced, okay, and very thorough in committing these hatred acts against, okay, the children of Israel.
Toxic baths and dehumanizing inspections at the border set the stage for a revolt, led by the 17-year-old maid from Juarez who defied the order to bathe.
Carmelita Torres was, I've compared her to the Rosa Parks of the border. In the morning of January 28th, 1917, there's this electric trolley full of mostly women that are crossing every day. She convinces the majority, if not all, the women in that trolley to just say no and to refuse. And they start a spontaneous protest.
There are accounts that in addition to the humiliating delousing procedures, for women, there was also sexual humiliation.
There were rumors that, you know, when they entered the plant and then they were told to strip, officers were taking their photos and then posting them in bars. So I can't even imagine the kind of feeling, like the feeling.
Now I place these photos up here because why? We know in the history during the slave trade, okay, this was a constant thing that these Edomites did to us, okay? They would either sodomize the men, okay, buck breaking, and they would also take the women, okay, which were the wives of the men that they were transporting over here, okay, and rape them. Many of the female slaves, okay, were pregnant or actually had babies on their journey here to America, okay? And this is what this man has done. So as you can see here, this was being done, okay, to the tribe of Issachar, okay, or you could say, or the Northern Kingdom tribes, okay? So this is dispelling that myth that they weren't getting oppression and they weren't going through here, having gasoline poured on them, okay, and being inspected like cattle the same way we were, okay? Now the only difference is that they had camera at that time to actually document this, okay? And this is just only a part of the story. Let's continue.
Feelings of violation and the feelings of, you know, outrage.
What started with just 200 protesters that morning slowly grew to a crowd of 2,000. Reporters said the scene reminded one of bees swarming. The hands of the feminine mob would claw at the tops of the passing cars. When the American officers tried to disperse the crowd, they were met with bottles, rocks, and insults. Protesters even laid down on the tracks in front of the trolley cars to create a blockade. They were joined by men in what's called the Bath Riots.
Now, guess what? Now, many times the apostles, elders, teachers, and brothers from Great Millstone, and likewise, brothers have brought it out many times that what? Okay, just like how we had an insurrection where we tried, during our oppression as slaves, and even afterward, okay, when we were so-called free, we had those things like the marches, okay, and we also had those where we went up against, okay, our oppressors. So likewise did the other tribes, okay. So it's not as I read earlier, Jeremiah 15:33, which talks about the children of Israel and Judah were pressed together, means what? We were going through the same exact thing. It was just in a different time period, or at the same time. It's just what got news more. Now the tribe of Judah obviously is going to get the headlines because why? Okay, Esau really hate. Okay, he's an anti-Mashiach. So guess what? Yahushua is from the tribe of Judah. So guess what? He's going after the people that look closer, okay, to Yahushua and Mashiach. Okay, let's continue.
And they shut down this border for 2 days.
And then all you hear is that the ringleaders are arrested and a few of the men are publicly executed.
As for Carmelita Torres...
Now, see right there, and that was an actual picture, okay, of an Issachar out there you see hanging out, you see on that tree there. This is the book of Psalms 109 and verse 3, and it says, this is the book of Psalms 109, Psalm verse 2, and it says, for the mouth of the wicked and the mouth of the deceitful are open against me. They have spoken against me with a lying tongue. What did they describe maybe 2 minutes ago into this video? They describe Issachar as what? Dirty, filthy. Okay, the tribes that are coming from the border, dirty, filthy, illiterate. Okay, when in fact, when you look at the so-called immigrants that were coming on the East Coast, they in fact were the filthy, dirty one that was bringing out those plagues from Europe. Okay, and they didn't add no value. Okay. They came in after everything was already built. Okay, continuing here. And it says, they have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They compasses me about also with words of hatred and fought against me without a cause. And that's what you see going on here. There was no cause for this. Baiting people in kerosene oil. Okay, molesting, sodomizing the women. Okay, and now you put the man to death because why? They spoke out against you. Okay, and then suddenly the leader, who was this female, disappeared. Okay, what's up with that? Let's continue.
As for Carmelita Torres,
it appears like she was thrown in prison, and as historians, we don't know what happened to her afterwards. We've lost every trace.
The fumigations didn't stop after the riots. In 1917 alone, over 100,000 Mexicans were deloused at the border. That same year, an immigration law made border procedures even more rigid. Immigrants at all points of entry needed to have a passport, take a literacy test, and many would have to pay an $8 head tax. And later that year, the U.S. Public Health Service laid down instructions for border agents about who should be kept out of the country.
Imbeciles, idiots, feeble-minded persons, physical defectives, persons afflicted with loathsome or...
That describes these Edomites to the T. Why are they here?
Dangerous, contagious diseases.
The discriminatory policies at the border resembled horrific events elsewhere in the world. In fact, while researching this, David stumbled upon a detail. The fumigation of Mexican immigrants wasn't just reminiscent of Nazi Germany. It was directly linked to it.
It's not so much that the United States was copying Nazi Germany. It's the opposite. Nazi Germany was copying the United States.
He found that in the 1920s, the U.S. started using Zyklon B, an extremely poisonous acid gas, to fumigate clothing at the border.
Now, it's interesting what he just said. Okay, now we always talk about what's going on right now, where they do what? These lockdowns, okay, these mandates that they're bringing out. They start out there out in Europe and these other countries, and then they bring it over here to the United States because it's gradualism, and this is exactly what you see going on there. They started out in the United States, and then they bought it out out there in Germany, okay, to go do what they were going to go do with those people that they call the Jews, which we know those are Jewish people. We know that those aren't the Jews, because we are the real Jews, okay? We are the real Hebrew Israelites, okay, that the Bible speaks of, okay? So that is what they're bringing out there.
And in 1937, in a German pest science journal, a scientist called for the use of Zyklon B in Nazi disinfection chambers. He included 2 photos of El Paso's delousing chambers as an example of how effective Zyklon B had been at the US border to kill unwanted pests. A few decades after the Bath riots, Mexico started sending men to work on US farms and railroads as part of a new labor agreement called the Bracero Program. And through the program, the border disinfections continued.
Here in this facility, some migrants were sprayed with insecticides.
This time, it was a substance called DDT,
dichloro-diphenyl-trichloroethane,
a toxic pesticide which decades later would be banned for agricultural use by most developed countries.
Repeated contact must be avoided.
They were sprayed in the face. They were sprayed in their private parts. And, they were stripped naked and inspected. And sometimes they're inspected like you would inspect livestock.
First-hand accounts from immigrants in the program reveal how little they knew about the fumigation.
Let's just pause for a second. This is the book of Psalms 10 and 8, and it says, "He sitteth in the lurking places of the villages, in the secret places, though he murder the innocent, his eyes are privy set against the poor." Do you know how many of these people are alive today? Okay, probably none or not many. Okay, the long-term effect of what they were doing, unbeknownst to these Issacharites, is incomprehensible. Okay, and that's why you're seeing right now. This is what this man has continued doing across the earth, and especially here in Great Babylon, America, where they're spraying this pesticide across the sky. Okay, and you now have people with so much type of illness. Okay, of course Esau comes with his magic pill, okay, to solve the problem. But this is where this wickedness, okay, in the modern times have started. You're seeing it right here. This is real.
So they talk about how humiliating it was, about why do they think we're so dirty? They'll call it the white powder. I don't know if they necessarily were told we're spraying you with DDT, but they'll call it polvo, the powder.
A miraculous white powder that is helping to win the war against disease.
Many of the employees who worked in the facilities weren't given many details either.
When I first started, my role was a clerk. I got the job mainly because I spoke Spanish. There was a hut in the area when they came in from the Mexican side that they were going there, and they had some sort of, it was for lice, they said. It was, to disinfect for lice.
It wasn't until the 1960s, when the Bracero program ended, that health authorities acknowledged the chemicals were dangerous and the baths and fumigations were finally discontinued.
In the border, a lot of things never become resolved. They just keep on repeating themselves.
And that's biblical that he said this, because you go into the book of Ecclesiastes 1 and 9, it says, "The thing that had been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there's no new thing under the sun." We are seeing it again right now, okay? It's right here. Exactly what we just seen, 1917, over 100 years ago, we are seeing that right now. Same type of headlines, okay? Lies, okay? Same face of everything that's wrong with this place here, which is the tribe of Israel, okay? And it's the same, and it's going to go in the exact same way that they did before, where they are poisoning us and with the intention of actually terminating all of us.
Decades after the disinfection campaign ended, the language, the strategy, and the dehumanizing politics of fear and exclusion still linger.
It's a health issue, too, because we don't know what people have coming in here.
They're coming in with diseases such as smallpox and leprosy and TB that are going to affect our people in the United States.
It's just a fact. You're going to see disease outbreak.
Apprehensions in the El Paso area specifically have spiked more than 600%.
They are essentially being warehoused, as many as 300 children in a cell.
Without adequate food, water, and sanitation.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border.
At the border between Juarez and El Paso, the same space where the bath riots once happened, hundreds of migrants have been huddled in makeshift detention centers. They've been waiting to find out if the U.S. government deems them fit for entry.
Lord willing, you are edified. I'd like to close it by giving all glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem, Rakakadash, double honor to the teachers, elders, and apostles of Great Millstone. Also, do brothers out there that are putting on the truth faithfully, fearlessly, feeding the sheep. And you brothers and sisters that are tuning in, Shalom.